Hey, my people. I'm going to go over the next little lesson. This is from the handouts that you guys received in Schoology. I would definitely look at those, really read this because it's got a lot of steps. When you break it down, it's not that complicated, but there is a lot to this, to be honest with you. So what you guys are going to do for this assignment to turn in this assignment is you will select one plant drawing for this assignment. And with that, you are going to make 5 different shapes. You can kind of see 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we have 5 right here. So 5 different shape divisions on that. The original looks like this, right? And so what you're going to do is you're going to add like 5 different abstract shapes on top of this. And one thing that I do recommend is that you guys, if you have something that's kind of natural like this, if you can find an organized way to put your shapes on this so that it doesn't look crazy and chaotic. Usually what works really well is if you have something natural with more rounded shapes. If you put something back here like these rectangles that are more geometric and opposite of shape to it, it is helpful. So you can add more than 5 squares or rectangles or whatever it is that you decide to put back here. On this, I just chose to do 5 because usually an odd number works really well whenever you're doing something like this. So the way that I'm going to explain it, I'm going to break this down into steps, and you're going to see this in your little handout. This is the first little step here. So when you're putting your shapes in there, you don't have to number your shapes. I just put that just so that you can see what all I have right here. One thing that I would recommend is you may not want to use the actual drawing, like draw on the actual piece, the original piece of art that you have when you're doing all this at this point. One thing I would recommend y'all do is to make copies of this. If you have a copy machine at your house, or if you're able to quickly go somewhere and make, maybe 3 copies of it, that's what I would tell you to do, because for me, drawing on top of this, you may end up erasing this, that, and the other. And when you get your final design, you could either trace it on here or just redraw it on here. So anyway, so that's the first little step. The second little step on this is you can kind of see the change that has happened to this. What you will be doing is, and I know this doesn't look light on here because it is a copy, but extremely lightly, you are going to fill in your sections on here. So you may have seen something like this before that is a positive and negative space kind of thing. So what you've got to decide is, do you want your background in this section to be shaded in black? We're just going to call it black. So if you do want that, this little plant right here is going to be white. Now the next one, the rule is, there are some rules to this little game. This next little section has to be white. So if this is black, the next section has to be the opposite. If this is white, then this plant has to be black. So the main thing to know when you start mapping out things is that black cannot touch black and white cannot touch white. So you end up with something, and this, it's starting to develop, it's starting to look really cool. So from here, now if you have copies, if you're drawing on a copy, you may not have to do step number 3. If you're drawing on your original, if you don't have access to a copy machine, really draw lightly on this thing, because what's going to happen here, and also, if you don't have access to a copy machine, one thing that I would tell you to do is take a photograph of your drawing right here And then what you can do is after you erase this drawing, if you're drawing on your original, you can refer back to what you have on your phone to fill this out. So what I did is very lightly, I don't know if y'all can see this, but very lightly, I ended up doing labeling what is white. So W for white, and you can kind of see that's white and all that. So I did that so that when you actually start adding, and we're going to be adding shapes and things like that to this piece. So when you actually start doing that, you'll be able to easily add some things. So, okay, so that's step 3. Like I said, this right here may not be necessary if you have this. Or, you know, honestly, like what you might could do if you don't have a copy of this, what you could do is just refer to your phone and skip this step. So, like I said, it's just, you know, whatever helps you guys as you're going so you don't get confused when you start labeling stuff. So, main thing to know with this is that you go from this, just the light little lines, to you're going to start adding some textures and things like that to this particular piece. Now, every little section that you do that was black or dark, you're going to end up either making it a solid tone, and it can be a variant of different gray tones, or it can be a pattern. Now, here it is. What will happen is you guys are going to add a minimum of 3 patterns to your piece. So, what you need to think about too when you're doing these patterns, and you can kind of see, and I'll zoom in on this thing. Okay, so you can kind of see that I have like a tiny pattern right here in the middle, and it's very, very dark. A lot of times if you have something and this is perceived as the background, you may want to include that and make that very, very small. And then as you go, like imagine these boxes in 3 dimension, as you go towards your foreground or whatever, what I've done with some of these boxes, sections, I've made them lighter just to give it a little bit more depth. So add variety of depth there. There's a pattern right here. There's a small, I mean, it's a kind of a crosshatchy pattern, I guess you would say, and then I've got a little pattern right here. But one thing that I will say with this piece is this pattern is repeated here. This pattern is repeated here. This pattern is repeated here. So one thing that I will say is whatever your patterns are, be it if you're choosing 3 to 5 or what have you, the thing that helps to unify your piece is if you repeat them, use repetition in your piece. Also, what helps to balance and unify things is if you're including something really, really small right here, include and this is a medium pattern, right here, and then include something that's a large pattern. So don't include all small patterns, all medium patterns, all large. Mix them up so you're going to have that depth in your particular piece. It's up to you as to how you want to handle this. This is what you're going to be turning in. It's just going to be in graphite for this week. Next week, what we're going to be doing is we're actually going to be adding some color or some pen and ink, whatever the media is of your choice. And I will show you some examples of my work just to give y'all an idea as to what to do. Now, one thing that's very important that I want you guys to see is the very last part of this handout that I'm giving you guys. I have an example of what to do and what not to do. So if you look, this is the piece of paper that, you know, you've got your grading criteria and all that. It's due on September the 11th by 3 o'clock. It is for a portion of a major grade. Yep. So this first little piece right here is actually pretty decent. One thing that I did do, and if you look at it, you might recognize there is a golden ratio, a golden spiral. And that one is a term of beauty, and it's, you know, if you look it up, there's certain little measurements and that sort of thing that you may see. You may have studied that in math. So I do have something back here. It is kind of, you know, if you look at it, it's round. And you know, originally I'd said you might not want to use more rounded stuff, but if you look, it's divided into rectangular or square-like sections. So it still has that orderly aspect. It's a larger pattern or larger division, and so it does work well because this thing is small. So this works. I like it. I think it's great. It's just fine. This one I think works really well too. One thing that I would tell you to do is on your multiple copies, I would do more than one. You can just turn in one. If you're not really sure which one is the best, you can turn in two. Like I said, I'm gonna end up grading one. Okay, so this one. This is it's cool. It's a bad example, and this is why it's a bad example. It's very busy. It's hard to tell where the plant is. If you literally are getting lost, and like on this one, it's very clear that there's a plant here. On this one, it's not so clear. So if you're getting lost and you're not really sure, one thing that I would say is simplify it. Make your shapes, your divisions, and your background larger so that, you know, things won't get chaotic, that sort of thing. So with that being said, if y'all have any questions, give me an email, and I look forward to working with y'all soon.